Good evening, everyone. Hello, Tivoli. I'm Joel Griffiths, and I am exhausted, but I'm also the mayor of this fine village, and I'm really thrilled. Because we started talking about the Sesquicentennial 5 months ago or so, back in January, and it is now here, this big weekend that so many of us have been working on for so long. We're going to have perfect weather, we've got great content, and I'm just thrilled because it's going to be hard to mess this up now. We've got all the ingredients in place, so very thrilled. I would like to invite my dear friend John Verteber up here, who is with the...
Say the full name.
This is Monumental Hudson Widow's Son, number 7, free and accepted basis.
Yes.
John and I were great friends in high school, and it's just a kick that here we are standing up, in our current roles and working on community and getting to hang out together. So I want to thank the Masons for having us and throughout the weekend, not just tonight, but with the grounds and everything. It's just, they're such a great community organization, so thank you, John. Welcome to our house. Okay, I'll be making bigger speeches later in the weekend, but I'd like to invite our Sesquicentennial chair, Trish Teaker, up to the stage to speak.
So as Joel just said, we've been working on this for a lot of months, and it's here, and we're all really excited, and we just feel so lucky to have such a wonderful community. There's just a community spirit here in Tivoli that can't be beat, and it's pretty exciting to be having 150 years since we've been incorporated. It's really amazing. I wanted to let everybody know that the Sesquicentennial will be going on all year long. So if people want to get swag, they should get cups and mugs and all kinds of clothing items, and you'll proudly be able to wear Tivoli outfits all year long. And we thank you all for being here, and we're excited for the weekend to begin. This is the beginning of the celebratory weekend.
All right, thanks, Trish.
Welcome. I'm Kevin Factor, and this is Caitlin Langstaff.
Yep.
We're the hosts for this storytelling event. It's not a slam, it's not a competition. We're just here to listen to the past. Some of it distant, some of it not too distant. I've been in the area for 20 years. Caitlin, you've been here 5 years?
I think.
5 years, you think. It goes by fast. And so when I moved into the area about 20 years ago, we were looking around for a place. I had a small child, and we didn't get a place in Tivoli. And about 5 minutes after that, I regretted it. And because when I came into town, there were 2 bookstores, and there was a wonderful funky bar on the corner, which we had found out was called Bailey's. And there was a barber pole and some barber chairs in a soon-to-be renovated building that became the pub. And there was a Mexican restaurant. There was a sushi restaurant. I was like, where is it? I'm from Long Island. I didn't think upstate did this. And gradually, all the people I knew and loved were in Tivoli. So finally, I pulled the trigger, and about 8 years ago, I moved in, and I just swallowed the Kool-Aid, and I've been blissed out ever since. And Caitlin, you like the shirt? Yeah. It's no, it's stupid T-shirts are a little like banjos, like people give them to you. If you have one, then you wind up like getting lots of other ones. So I had this. I'm a forager, and I got this stupid T-shirt, and then everyone's like, "Oh, you'll wear that? Here, I got this." And I also have a collection of banjos at home that I didn't pay for. because they're like stupid t-shirts. And I thought we might get a stupid t-shirt for the 150, but I was told it was an impossibility.
Because they're not stupid.
No, they're not. Maybe that's a problem. So, do we have anything else to say? You want to explain a little bit about what we're doing?
Yeah, so when you get up here, everyone can hear in the back, so this sounds good to you? Okay. But I do think you kind of got to stay on the mic a little bit. So if you move over here, it's a little different. It's a good room, but it's nice if you kind of stay just a little close to the mic and you don't move around too much. That's all. And also, these are your stories, your personal stories. Just as a precaution for some, we play a little banjo at 5 minutes. Some of you are relieved, I know.
Don't make me play the banjo.
Yeah, so here, it's going to sound like this, so you recognize it. That's good. And that'll get you ready for the Hook Nanny. And that's it. So we're just going to sit back and enjoy and support the first storyteller of the night. It's always hard to be the first one, although this person requested to be the first one. So here we go. My beloved new neighbor, Jim.
Hello, Tivoli.
Hey, Jim.
This story is about risk. My wife Claire and I have been coming to Tivoli for years. We got married here, and then last year we bought a house. Yeah, let's applaud that house. We took a risk that has paid off every single day. Living in Tivoli, quite honestly, feels like a miracle to me. Especially when I think about where I came from back in the day. This is a story about getting from there to here. I'm living in the Bronx in the 1980s. That's unexpected. The Bronx in the 1980s. I'm living in a tenement that's got so much graffiti on the outside of it. It looks like a carnival worker with all the tattoos. There's no more room left on his body. Nearby is Fordham University, where I've just recently graduated from, with this lush, Gothic, you can't applaud everything. With this lush, Gothic campus behind a fence. That's my before picture. The Bronx is my after picture. And to be honest, things are trending downward. I have a roommate named Thomas. Speaking of crime, Thomas works on Wall Street. Thomas is a stockbroker who lives in the Bronx because he tells me the Bronx has the highest per capita concentration of underground social clubs with underground card games. Thomas knows sleight of hand. He's always practicing with a deck of cards, and sometimes he goes and uses it to cheat at poker. Some nights he comes home with a wad of cash and a glint in his eye. Other nights, empty pockets and a black eye. So one day I'm home, I'm in the apartment, and Thomas calls from work. And he says, go to the oven and open the oven door. And I'm like, we've never opened the oven door. We're in our 20s and we're single. We're like a science experiment testing how long can the subjects live without ever cooking for themselves. But I go to the oven and I open it, and there is a brown paper bag. And in the bag is $1,000. I know what this is. This is our rent money. Half from Thomas and half from me. So I go back and say, Thomas, you want me to take this to the landlord? He says, no. I want you to take that to the OTB. OTB, if you don't know, is off-track betting, where you go to gamble on racehorses. There used to be hundreds of OTBs in New York. And now, I'm not a gambler, but even I know it's probably not a good idea to bet the rent on a horse Well, first I should tell you what he said before I say that. He says to me, I got a hot tip from my guy at Belmont Park. He gave me 5 words. Rumpelstiltskin to show in the third. That is 6 words. Thomas was a stockbroker who wasn't good with numbers, which might have been a clue to me. Anyway, so I have just enough sense to know that betting the rent on a horse named Rumpelstiltskin maybe not the best idea. But I have a problem with risk. I can't resist it. By this time in my life, I have jumped off a 90-foot bridge into a reservoir. I've run up to a mountaintop in a lightning storm. As a Catholic schoolboy, I once talked back to a nun. So I take too many risks, but for the truly self-destructive act, I need a catalyst. It was my friend Drayton who dared me to jump off that bridge. And that's what Thomas is doing right now with the $1,000 wager. He's daring me to jump. So what do? I grab a bag and I bang out of the apartment, and I'm now galloping. I got 15 minutes to make it to the OTB. And I'm running, and I realize what I look like to the people on the street. I look like a white boy running through the Bronx holding what's apparently a bulging bag of cash, which I am. So I run faster, and I get to the OTB, and there's like 5 minutes left. I get in line behind the regulars. The regulars are stooped old men clutching the daily racing form. For years, they've been making the same kind of bet over and over. And sometimes they have the thrill of beating the odds, but over time, it's just worn them down. And now here they are, yet again, in the same windowless room, shuffling forward. I don't see any of that. I'm like, I need to get this bet down on Rumpelstiltskin. Can we move the line? Rumpelstiltskin. I read that story in college. It's about a king who says to a woman, if you turn that pile of straw into gold, I will make you my queen. And if you don't, what'll I do? I'll cut your head off. And so the woman is desperate. She goes and she finds an imp named Rumpelstiltskin. And she says to the imp, if you can change that pile of straw to gold, I'll give you my firstborn child. And so he does, and she marries the king, and when she has a baby, Rumpelstiltskin, the imp, comes around to collect. And she says, no. Because this is a story about a debt that can't be paid, about a loss that cannot be abided. So I'm in line, I have that memory, it makes no impression on me. I'm like, I got 2 minutes left, I'm gonna make it to the window, I'm gonna get this bet down, I'm gonna get this bet down on Rumpelstiltskin to show, which means all he has to do is finish in the top 3, and we will turn 1 month's rent into 4 months' rent. And then, I step out of line. And I watch the race on a monitor, and I see Rumpelstiltskin make the final turn and charge down the home stretch and come in second. Second to last. We would have lost everything. I take the bag back home, I put it in the oven, and when Thomas arrives, I have a little fun with him, and I say, I didn't see the race, but I'm trying to decide, should I use my winnings to buy a painting by Rembrandt, Picasso, what do you think? And he goes, nah, man, he busted out. There's no money, we lost it. So I go to the oven, and I pull down the door, with a big smile, and say, we're good. I didn't place the bet. And Thomas is furious. He says, You passed on a wager with 4-to-1 odds to show. We could have made a friggin' fortune. I will never trust you again. He goes to his room and slams the door, and a month later, he's gone. And with him went my need to attach to guys like that. To guys who get a thrill from flirting with disaster instead of risking success by creating something new, you know, a business or a marriage. And so it was on that day that I started to turn from risking self-destruction toward risking fulfillment. Like buying a beautiful home in the beautiful village of Tivoli, USA. That's the day at OTB I stepped out of line and tricked the inn.
Thank you.
Me some money and take me to OTV, and he said, play the Mutters. That's my tip to you all here today. Play the Mutters. Share with us the funniest, strangest, darkest, loveliest, crazy moment you've experienced in this lovely town of Tivoli. The day a bear came by to have a plate of meatballs. I always remember her. All right. Yes, I saw a fox 2 days ago. I got a tip. I went there, and I saw the little guy in the street, and then it went into my friend's backyard, so we followed it into the backyard. We kept following it, and then her husband came out, so we ran. Yeah, well, I was going after the chicken. Okay, I'm going to practice that one. Okay. When I moved, one of my chickens escaped, and she was found by a neighbor who wouldn't give her back. Oh my God. Later over time, we became best friends. Share the eggs, that's good. Oh my God, finders keepers. All right, the next person on our list, and I hope everyone here is percolating the stories, so they're like, now I've got an idea, is somebody who gives me some really wonderful owl tips, Jackie.
Okay, that's hard to follow Jim. I should also say my story is a tiny bit PG-13, just a tiny bit, in case anybody is concerned.
Oh, yeah, just tiny bit. Okay.
All right. I guess I'll say that I live on North Road here, and I've lived here for 21 years. And my story is really about people who have come and left Tivoli. And so there's really going to be two examples of that. That will eventually be presented to you, and they eventually will intertwine. So the first example of the erstwhile Tivolian, I know probably some of you remember the Kakalins who lived on Lisa Lane. A great family who originally were from Russia and then moved to Berlin about a year ago. And my son was very close to the two middle boys, Peter and Nikolai, who I really adored, and they kind of broke my heart when they left a year ago. And one of the reasons I loved Peter and Nikolai, well, there were many reasons. They were smart, observant, creative, curious, and they also had that very delightful quality of being readers who mispronounced words a lot because, you know, English was their second language, so many of their words we've adopted in our family. Iron is now iron, and lavender is lavendar, and let's see if you can figure out what this one is. Mayonnaise. What do you think mayonnaise is? Mayonnaise. Yes. Okay. So let's kind of leave Peter and Nick in our heads, and I'll move on to the second example of the erstwhile Tivolian, which I know many in the room will recall. I like to refer to him as the charming man of North Road. And I first met the charming man of North Road in Murray's about 4 years ago. Sat down and had a cup of coffee. He was a very gregarious person who was also a filmmaker like me and seemed to know many of my colleagues and many of my students and also many of my neighbors. And just this incredibly gregarious person. And it found out about a week later that he was also keeping a blog about Tivoli and was writing very specific comments about many people in the town. And the evil genius move was that he didn't use people's names, but he would have these incredibly well-crafted descriptors, like the rosy-cheeked newlywed who excels at trivia night, or the svelte portrait painter who's not afraid of a sexuality. So you can imagine, if you were a reader of the blog, you were invested in trying to make sure you knew who everybody was. And it was kind of, in many ways, really kind of charming. And there was a lot of accuracy in some of these descriptors, but sometimes they were a little bit nasty. And the one that I feel like is kind of like cauterized into my brain was the obese sex pest who hangs out at the ATM machine. So that was some of the writing examples before the first arrest of the charming man of North Street. So actually, as a side story, right after the first arrest of the charming man of North Street, Amy Peterson very kindly stepped in, I think, to take care of his dog who got left behind. And Amy, if I remember correctly, when he came back, he offered to make you dinner, and Amy's a vegetarian, and I think he offered to make a kidney pie. And I know that because I was invited to that dinner, and I forgot, and then the next morning I saw him on North Road, and he really chewed me out. He was so angry at me for not coming to dinner, and I felt kind of bad about it. And then I also thought, like, I wonder if this is going to end up in the blog. And so, after that first arrest, I have to say the blog of the charming man got a little bit more focused, and it seemed that he was only writing about neighbors on North Road. And it was literally like one house after the next. Everybody kind of made an appearance in the blog. And, it was kind of coming closer and closer, And I felt like I started to read this blog in a kind of as like a Talmudic scholar. I was like, pretty invested and relieved that I didn't seem to have made an appearance yet. And then actually I was kind of like mad that I hadn't made an appearance yet. What's wrong with me? And, and then I thought about it, and then one day I thought, oh my God, I'm the obese sex pest. It's me. I'm the obese sex pest. I don't remember hanging out at the ATM machine, but it must be me. But that obviously was right before the second arrest of the charming man of North Street. So one day, I was sitting out in front of my house early in the morning with my son and Peter and Nikolai waiting for the bus. And 5 state police troopers roar down North Road and park in front of the charming man's house and go inside. And I'm pretty sure that's the last time any of us actually saw him. And of course, Peter and Nick and my son are like flummoxed and completely invested, like, what's happening? And, they're like, Jackie, who lives there? What's happening? And I was like, it's a long story. And anywho, I see the bus coming from the corner, and Peter looks at me and he says, anywho? Jackie, no offense, but I don't think that's how that word is pronounced.
Worthy of a blog post. The mystery charming man of North Road. So next funniest, strangest, darkest, ugliest, crazy moment in this fair town. We used to ice skate at the pond under the old water tower. I was hanging on to a friend while learning to skate. We lost our balance at the same time. She fell on me and broke my leg. My dad carried me home to our house, 81 Broadway, no longer there, across from the water tower. Wow.
Tell that story.
Yes, that's should we get Bob?
Yeah. So both of you, I'm going to adjust.
All right, I'm going to adjust my mic.
I'm so glad I don't even know Bob. I'm glad we did that.
My name's Bob Waterhouse. We've been residents of Tivoli for over 50 years. I've been a past member of the fire department, the rescue squad, the village board, deputy mayor, and I forgot everything I was going to say. But when we first moved to Tivoli and came into the village, there were 8 businesses, I think. There was the Dino's grocery store around the corner. And then there was the barber shop down the street. There was the piano shop. Everybody knows about that with Larry. He used to wear the 19th century rig with top hat and spats. And then there was the panty factory. That was quite a place. And then it was Stan. Stan Williams had a confectionery store, ice cream and everything else. And of course there was the laundromat, I believe, was still there at the time. And the library was over where the Trish and Bernie store had been stored. So, and then there was Bailey's. Now that was the place. If you were up here, yeah, on the village board would have a meeting, and after each meeting, we'd end up at Bailey's. We got more solved and solved more problems in Bailey's than any place else. The Baileys consisted of the mother, Danny, Dick was the old man, and the daughter, Ann. And if you were in there at the time and were lucky, Danny had a few drinks and he was singing Irish songs, and he was great. And Dick, well, yeah, Dick was an ornery old guy. If he didn't like you, he would say, out. I was there one day when 2 state troopers came in. They weren't in uniform, but they came in and they sat down at the bar, and Dick walked up to them and said, you had enough, get out. That was that thing. Yes. So, like I told you, I was on the village board for a good many years. And after a time, I resigned because I was offered a job in Egypt. Well, I took the job in Egypt, and I was gone for about 3 months, and I came home on leave, and I walked into Bailey's, which was the same as if I'd been there the day before. Nothing changed. The same old farm habit as black velvet and beer. But I walked in there, and the old farmer was there. He says, hey, Bob, where you been? I says, I was over in Cairo. He says, oh, isn't that great? I was there last week. But I love Tivoli, and my wife and I and my 4 sons, we really found that, like those gentlemen said, we were from, well, originally from the Bronx, but I was raised in, I think I was raised in the Bronx. I was originally from Brooklyn. I mean, your memory, you know, as you get older, you forget, you know. I forget that I'm 59. I'm 95. I don't know, just wishful thinking. But like I say, Danny, Dick used to like to cook, and he liked to make chili. And beside the bar, he had a sign up there, chili, 50 cents, snappers are removed. Anybody know what the snapper is? Yes, wind. From chili meat. But he had that sign, snapper removed. But like, we love Tivoli, and I hope we stay here quite a few more years.
I would like to just tell you one or two more things about Bob Waterhouse. In 1944, at age 17, he asked and received permission from his parents to join the U.S. Navy. And he's a World War II vet. He served in the Pacific. And for that and all the other reasons he told you about, I'm thrilled that he accepted my request that he serve as the Grand Marshal of our Sesquicentennial Parade tomorrow. And I know Bob's been practicing his wave, so look for him in the parade tomorrow. Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Honor. Yeah, so we have like new people who've only been here 20 years, and folks like Bob, you know, who've been here since the beginning, it seems like. And it's one of the things I love about this town is just the confluence of the old and new, the holy and the profane. I play a little banjo in the hootenanny out at the pub, and people come in and sit and play with us, and sometimes we have amazing musicians. Sometimes there's people like me, you know, who just know 3 chords and like to bang away. And I was like, one night, this bar van pulls up, and all of these young people get out, and you can tell they're conservatory students, and we've never seen them in the bar before, in the pub before. And they're sort of hanging out and watching us, and we was like, all right, we just kept playing. And then one of them comes up and says, would it be okay if one of my friends sat in with you? Like, sure, absolutely. There's chairs, we have a digital songbook, and you can look at the chords and play along or sing if you know the tune. So this guy comes over and he sits down, and he's got a violin, and he's really good. He's super good, and he's playing. And I'm like, wow, do you know these songs? He goes, no, never heard these songs before. And he was remarkable. And so we're sitting there, we're taking a little break, and I'm like, so, are you at the conservatory? And he says, no, I'm visiting a friend who is. And I'm like, oh. So, I mean, you obviously play. Where do you play? He goes, well, oh, in the city. I said, oh, yeah, where? I said, the Philharmonic. And then you could hear a pin drop after that. All of a sudden, everybody got a little uptight there. And Greg Moynihan, our bass player, quickly sort of looked him up. And yeah, he wasn't just with the Philharmonic, he was the first chair. And later, after he left, and we were sort of sitting around wondering, that was amazing. One of our regulars was like, well, you know, he really didn't sort of have it on this song. As I love this town, it'll bring you down to its level, you know. So who do we have up?
Oh, you're gonna read those?
Oh, I gotta read these.
I love the song.
All right. Okay. front. Halloween night, that the National Guard showed up. Yeah. And we barricaded the four corners. Drum corps, rehearsals at the American Legion, marching through town for rehearsal, marching to the Red Church. Wow. I don't know if those two are related, but those are great. And unable to get to the school the day after Halloween because the door was blocked by an outhouse. Oh, the mischief runs deep in this village. Willow.
Done this before, even though I'm a theater director. I'm very nervous. Hi. I decided just today to tell a story because I was thinking of my first friend. I've only lived here 4 years. I know I'm a newbie, but I moved here from California on Halloween. And I never spent a winter up in this area, and I loved it. I loved it. We stayed in a little gatehouse, not in Tivoli, but just 3 miles up Woods Road in Germantown at Southwood Estate. And my husband Orrin and I rented this place for 7 months to check out the area. I'd been coming to New York City my entire life because my father's a New Yorker and I went to NYU, but it's different up here and just so lovely. And I loved the snow and I loved the black and white in the winter, and people thought I was really weird because I would get so excited about the Gothic elements that I would see in the seasons. So when it was time to leave Southwood, and the exit date was very firm because they rent this place out for weddings, so there was no wiggle room. My husband, we had looked at all the towns everywhere around, every town within 100 miles. And my husband was like, we have to live in Tivoli. And I was like, okay. And there wasn't any rental. There's no rental in Tivoli. I would look every day. And meanwhile, while I was staying at Southwood, I would ride the back road throughout the winter woods to the Traghaven, and I loved it. I would go to the Traghaven, and I would go mainly on Sunday nights to hear the Hootenanny. And I immediately met this girl there, adorable, spirited, fun, bright energy lady, Veronica. And we instantly bonded. So for months, every Sunday, I would go to the Traghaven. I didn't really know anybody in the area. Most people I knew were down in the city. And I would go, and I looked so much forward to it because the winter can get kind of isolating. And I would go, and I'd go to the Traghaven, and there would be Veronica. She's near my age, but she had a lot of energy and a lot of spirit. And we would dance and listen to the Hootenanny and laugh and talk. And I just had a great time with her, and she said to me, oh, you're gonna live in Tivoli. I live in Tivoli, you're gonna live in Tivoli. And I said, okay, but there's no place to go, and I have to get out of my where I am in just 3 weeks. She said, no, you're gonna be in Tivoli. We're gonna be here together. So she sent me to a place on North Road, and she said, go to the place with the insects on the front, and go there and talk to Patrick. And so I said, okay, and I went to the place with the insects on the front, and I'm like, oh my God, because when you've lived in the Bay Area, you're living in a place like this. This was like a 2-story house. I'm like, wow. So I go in there, and there's this interesting, wonderful character painting inside of it. Like, I couldn't find him. I'm like, hello? And he's like in a closet painting, and it was Patrick. And he was like, hey, and I said, I'm Willow, and he said, we'd talked before, and I said, what about this place? He said, I think there's like a lot of people that want to get this place, and I was like, oh, well, I understand. But he wrote to Linda, the landlady, and Spencer, her son, And I don't know what happened. Warren and I talked to them, and we just impressed them and said how much we love Tivoli and this and that, and we got the place. Meanwhile, my friend Veronica, who was always wearing wigs, which I kind of thought was really just part of her personality, she had cancer. And so our last walks and hangouts at the Hootenanny, I knew that it was kind of her third round with cancer, and I found that out later. We walked down, way down North Road, and we looked at that yellow flower that blooms here like it's the first to bloom. I forget what it's called, but what is it? It's a big, and she just said, this is my favorite flower, and I took all these pictures there, and unfortunately Veronica passed, a few months later, but in the meantime, I was in the house that she had led me to, and funny enough, her husband, Harry, helped me to build a stage right here. I'd always had a dream of, I'm a theater director, and I always had a dream of doing a production that I could walk to, or having a place that I could put plays up that I could walk to. And I thought it would be a barn, but it turned out to be this place. So thank you to Johnny and the Masons for letting me put a show up here. Sorry, I probably should just, okay. Put a show up here, the Love Play. I hope to do more productions here. And her husband, Harry, helped me build this set to Veronica's husband. So here's to Veronica, here's to the Drag Haven, and here's to Synchronicity and the passage of the seasons. Thank you. Thank you, Willow. Veronica here, because I knew her very little, but she was not the sweetest, kindest golden. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. There was an email going around at one point. It was Angela Cole, when the panic sets in, when the restaurants close. And these people that go from corner to Trag to Santa Fe that need food, and when those places close, they're like, what do we do? And I was like, Angela, I'll feed you. It's like, and I wish she was here tonight, but she's off doing like surfing in Costa Rica, woman power. Okay, here we go. Anyway, but the oven, Jim learned about the oven. The time Skull got shot, but the steel plate in his heel stopped the bullet. Skull! Does anybody know who Skull is? It's okay, it's not. Woo! All right. Mason. It's a Mason. I've never been a Mason. I met Masons tonight. Okay. In 1996, more than 10 years before moving to Tivoli, my now husband and I met on our first date here. That happens. A lot of romance happens. I don't know. I'm just saying that. Okay. I found a fresh severed owl's head in Claremont. Well, that ended the romance. Oh, okay. Fresh severed. Okay. Who's next? Who's next to Art? Art! Yay! Art!
Don't you want to live in Tivoli the rest of your life? All right. Wow, I didn't have like a smooth narrative structure here that I was going to spew out, but there's a couple things I have to comment on. The guy on North Road, his blog is still delicious reading, and it's just vague enough that, like Jackie said, you do wonder, oh, was that me? But actually, the truth is, I was never interesting enough to him to be in the blog. So, Jackie, I feel your pain. You know, maybe if he'd been around longer. The first time I ever heard about Tivoli was when I was in high school in about 1972, and there was an article in the Washington Post about that guy Larry that had the piano shop next to Bailey's. And Larry lived in the 19th century. So when I came to Tivoli, I said to Mrs. Bailey, "Oh, so how about that Larry?" She goes, "Yeah, he lives in the 19th century, but then he comes over here and uses our water for an hour." But I was accepted to Bard. I never visited the campus. I had good SAT scores. I only had 1-800, no, it doesn't matter, but I was accepted anyway, and so, like, great. And so, the first time I came up here, my dad drove me up to go to college, and we stayed at the Tivoli Motel, which was, I mean, it's still there. I don't know what it's like now, but back then it was very squalid. And we drove through town, and I remember, my God, this is like little Appalachia. It was the buildings on Broadway half the buildings were boarded up. The sidewalks were all crooked and going in different directions, and it was, it seemed like a land that time forgot. So then, when I started going to Bard, somebody brought me up to Bailey's, and I met Mr. and Mrs. Bailey, and Mrs. Bailey was a Moray, so she inherited the place when her father died, and she loved Bard students. She loved Bard students. She'd tell you over and over. And Dick was the original source. If you wanted to know about history, you would ask Dick, and he would tell you. He used to say, "Oh, you get me going, kid. I'm worse than a woman." But he could talk. So, after Dick died, then Danny and Lillian took it over. And, when Danny decided to get drunk, he took everybody with him. So, that was a crazy time. Sometimes I'd get a call from my friends who were at Bailey's, and they'd go, "You gotta get over here right now." And, but Lillian, not Lillian, Anna, on the other hand, was scared of everything. She would sometimes close the bar for no reason, just because somebody drove around the corner that she thought was dangerous. But those were the days. We were lucky to have experienced a bar like Bailey's, because now everything is so much more corporate and commercial and chains and everything, and you don't get that feel of like the old times like you did there. But one of the funny things about Tivoli is that, when I first got to Tivoli and the sidewalks were all crooked, this was the Tivoli of the big families. I was met by a welcoming committee of, I think, Bobby and Foster Dunn and some other, local fellows. And they were very amused that a long-haired Bard kid like me was walking down the street. So they kind of gave me the third degree. But, in a kind of friendly way. But Tivoli has had a history of rich people coming into town and deciding that they could buy the town and take it over. So in 1981, that person was the Count, Jean de Castellet. And he bought as many buildings as he could, and all of a sudden they were being renovated. And the old panty factory, if you've seen pictures, if you haven't seen these pictures, you should go back and look at the archive of photos from 1981 from the Tivoli Centennial. Photos by, I don't know, I'll think of it in a minute. But there's pictures of Tivoli in 1971 at the Centennial, and you can see kind of how decrepit it is. So by the time I got there in 1975, it hadn't gotten any better. So there was still, Dino had a liquor store there. When Dino went out of business, he had a sale it was $1 for every bottle. So I bought 20 bottles that included cream de banana, gallons of Gallo jug wine, all kinds of horrible crap. And I brought home to my roommates, and they were like, "What? You could have bought food with that, buddy." But The first place I ever rented was in what's now Gary DeMoro's office. I'm just going to ramble on, so if you guys want me to stop, just play the music and do like the Academy Awards. I'll say I want to thank Jesus, I want to thank my parents, I want to thank... this story really has no narrative arc, aside from the fact that I'm still here.
Wait.
Troll House.
Back then, we used to have band practice, like all the time, like 4 nights a week, well, 5, 7 nights a week. We're all different bands, so we would just have band practice, and you know, nobody ever complained. One time, the people next door sent their granddaughter over, and she said, you know, the old people can't hear themselves think. But nobody ever called the police, and you know, sometimes we would hear applause coming from across the street. One time, the Count owned our house, and the Count lost interest after a while, so we didn't pay our rent for a year. And then after a while, he noticed. He was like, "Hey, you know, you guys owe us like $3,000." We're like, "Well, okay, we'll pay you back." He's like, "Okay, well, that's cool. Just stay in the house. You know, just pay me back when you can." And, you know, next door to us lived Scott, and Scott would sell you any amount of weed. So you'd go over there with $1.61, and he'd sell you $1.61 worth of weed. I'm trading in my roommate's Ford Pinto for a joint. But, okay, well, we're getting into the PG. But then after that, everything was great.
Nice t-shirt.
Oh, thanks. This is actually my son. It's my son, the village, he worked here. He did something for the village, and they gave him this t-shirt for like nothing. You know? So I know it's possible. So funny, strange, dark, lovely, crazy moment. Wandering the cemetery. Dressed as a plague victim on Halloween. 12 years ago, I walked into the Sesquicentennial and met Tim Vol, and it was like falling into a vortex of sunsets, vodka, and joy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Russian Lit, but I'm convinced Tim is the 5th brother Karamazov. Funny, strange, dark, lovely, crazy moment. Seeing the glorious mural of the Canadian Rockies painted by our own mayor, Joel Griffin, in Ginny's bedroom, complete with portraits of 2 of her lapdogs painted in the valley.
She did say not a lot of boys have spent as much time in Ginny's bedroom as you have.
Thank you.
It was a good paying job.
Next, we have Carrie.
Hello. I'm Karen. The first night that I spent in Tivoli, I didn't sleep at all. At all. I just moved here. That day, and my furniture hadn't arrived yet, so I was sleeping on a yoga mat in the floor of my extremely empty house, and I realized in that moment that I had never in my life slept in any empty building on any night. I had always lived in apartment buildings that had like dozens or hundreds of people in them, so the sounds that I was accustomed to were like parties and dogs and fights and babies. And these sounds were entirely different. They were like the creaking and popping of the walls and like this crazy skimpering that would happen on the roof. And then we see sounds from the basement like gurgling and burping, but then also this like weird snore that sounded like the snore of a dragon whale. I didn't know a lot about animals either. I am kind of a city girl. I did spend a lot of time outside. I don't know about very many animals at all. In fact, the first time that I saw a groundhog in Dan and Amy's yard, I texted him that there was a kitty cat-sized bear in his yard. I'm not really an outside girl, which is weird because I'm from Mississippi, but I lived most of my life in the city, and I try to stay outside, stay inside as much as possible because it's too hot out there. But when I moved here, when the first time I came to Tivoli, I hadn't been outside literally in months. I was living in a studio apartment in Manhattan, and Laura came and picked me up to save me from there because I was just trapped during the middle of the pandemic. And I hadn't walked in so long that the first time I walked that loop, my feet blistered. No lie. But I fell in love with Tivoli on that very first visit, and I immediately bought a house. And I love my house. Tivoli is a really cute place where I've gotten to know a lot of animals, raccoons and chipmunks and squirrels, and I also feed the birds like a Disney princess outside, and the bluebirds come. I tell people that Tivoli looks like the first half of a really scary movie. Which is all I could think about when I bought that old house. Because when people ask me, why are you so afraid to be alone in the house, I tell them that I'm not afraid to be alone in the house. I'm afraid that I'm not alone in the house. Because the thing is, my house isn't just old, my house is really, really, really old. My house was built in 1787, the year the Constitution was signed. And when I found that out, I really wanted to find out who lived there first. And so I did a lot of research. It turns out it's pretty hard to come across documents from the 1700s, but I did find out about a lot of people. Not all of them gave me a lot of peace. For example, Roswell C. Gleason bought my house in 1876, and he was a candyman and an undertaker. Two super different kinds of jobs. And he also used to advertise my place in a newspaper in Brooklyn for families to come and visit, which had to have been like the weirdest Airbnb in the world. I was starting to get really nervous about it. It didn't give me that much peace until I read about the Lashers. Now, a lot of you guys know the Lashers because their name is all over this town. And their name is the first one that appears on the deed to my house. In 1910, Clarence and Maria Lasher bought my house. And 20 years later, in 1931, they sold it to their son, Henry, I believe, and his wife, Emma Lasher, for, and I quote, $1 and natural love and affection, lawful money of the United States. My house was purchased with the currency of love. So nothing spooky could have ever happened there, right? That's not what my friends thought. My housewarming party was nothing but ghost stories from my friends about all of the creepy things that definitely happened in my house because it was so old. I don't know why they thought I would think that was funny, but the problem was my housewarming took place during the pandemic. It was on Zoom. So all of them were telling me these creepy stories about my house from their houses with their loved ones, but I was listening to all these creepy stories about my house in my house alone by myself. I started to get really, really, really nervous. The next day, I was on my patio, I kid you not, and I suddenly saw in the grass a little stone that was, square on the bottom and round on top, like a gravestone. It was laying face down in the dirt, so writing side down, but even I know, not gonna turn over a gravestone. So I just left it. But I started to get super nervous all the time. Every time the sun would go down, the hair on my arms would lift up, and I would start hearing everything. I had these massive antennas, right? I could hear anything, and I was hearing stuff all the time. The night got really bad. I ordered some groceries to be delivered, because I'm a city girl, and I was in my kitchen unpacking my dishes, when I could swear that I heard someone walking around the house, and the crunchy leaf sound around the house. And I knew that I heard it. I did not make it up. I knew exactly what it was. I felt it. I felt that there was someone around me. So I turned on some really, really loud music and I tried to wash it out. It wasn't working. I couldn't shake it. So finally I said, screw it. And I just went upstairs, turned off all the lights, went to bed at 8 o'clock. It did not stop. All night long, I heard crazy stuff. I shot up out of the bed. Every time I heard it, there was like this rustling at the front door, like someone scratching at the front door, and this like running back and forth, like rummaging around, like there were a bunch of gremlins down there breaking into my house. I was a mess. I was so nervous. I was up all night long, and then finally in the morning, after a terrible night's sleep, in the light of day, I came downstairs, opened the front door to find that I had heard everything exactly correct. The person wandering around my house was the grocery delivery driver looking for a doorbell. And the gremlins breaking into my house were raccoons who had put my groceries all over the place. Because I completely forgot that I had ordered groceries and just went to bed instead. Anyway, now I love living in Tivoli and I'm not scared anymore. So a couple of weeks ago, I got the courage to turn over that gravestone. And you're never gonna believe what I found. Solomon van Steenberg was born in 1767 and is listed in the very first census of the United States. What a cool guy. He would have been 20 years old when my house was built, and I have a pretty big hunch that he's the one who built it. Might be the one who shares it with me now. But wherever he is, I think he'd be very happy to know that the house is still standing, and that it's filled with the currency of love, and that it is only occasionally burgled by gremlins.
Gorgeous job. Jack, you'll meet them at the door with those postcards about the future of Story Slams. I was just thinking, did you buy the house all by yourself?
Yeah, man.
That's so cool.
Ladies are doing it.
I did that in Coxsackie, and it turned out to be a funeral home at some point, but I did that on my own. It's really fantastic. Good. Okay, I can't put it completely, but I think I have to try, so. Okay. Telling or thinking Joel is the world's best mayor. He was in the middle of an interview by someone. I'm not going to say who said this, but there's a lot of love in this for you. World's best mayor. What? That's you. You. The love.
I just, again, called him the world's best mayor, but I'll tell you a little.
Okay, hold on. Wait, get ready. Okay, hold on. I love that you're coming up, so you have a story ready. I love it. Okay.
I got a few years on it.
All right. The snowstorm last May 9th of 2021. Just leave it at that. The Tommy Ryan night, a longer story. People, you know you want to get up and tell stories. All right. You got something to say.
I just want you to trip on the thing.
Yeah.
Nice shoes.
Thank you. I'm sometimes known as Tivoli Rose. In New York City, I was New York City Geranium Rose. I could tell a lot of stories. I'm just going to be brief because less is more in my estimation. The thing about Joel, he's a great mayor and it's very true. But you probably also know the Tivoli Baker, Michael, the Tivoli Baker.
Woo!
Right?
Yeah.
He's not here because he's got to get some sleep so he can go to work in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. I have a deal with Michael. I bring him a few flowers, and he won't let me buy coffee. I can have all the coffee I want whenever I want. And some days, at the end of the day, if I go by and he doesn't do leftovers, so he'll give me whatever he has left. And I will then keep one item for myself and then give it out to other people. So one day I will oftentimes go to the library or up to the... So one day I went up to the mayor's office, and there was Joel being interviewed by somebody. And I came in and I said, Joel is the best mayor in the world,
Good
which
time.
is true. And I handed each one of them a muffin. And so again, as soon as I came by, I said, Joel is the best mayor. I had house the best mayor in the world. And we all know that's true. Joel is the best mayor in the world. I will be just brief and let it go at that, because I could tell you other Joel stories which are equally well.
Nice t-shirt.
Yeah, thanks.
What's the story behind that one?
This is the only one I actually paid for. But yeah, it's the time of year you want to do your yard and everything. These guys, they specialize in invasive species. If you don't get it, you won't get it. All right. We have last...
I want to say, wait, hold on. Do we have any more storytellers that are hanging? Yep, let's have you. What's your name?
I'm Louise Huber.
Louise!
Oh.
Hi, everybody. I lived in Tivoli. I'm a new-ish person. I've lived here for 24 years. Before we came to Tivoli, I was pregnant with twins, and my husband had a dream. We weren't sure if they were boys or girls. We hadn't had that big ultrasound yet. And he said, oh, I think it's 2 boys. And I dreamed that I was playing basketball on some rural basketball court with my boys. And we moved here from West Hollywood, and we get here, and we go to the park, and Dan goes, oh my God, that's the basketball court. So we've been here ever since. And I was thinking about erstwhile Tivolians while you guys were talking, and one of my favorite memories about Joan Champlin is that I went in one day just to get a few canned goods at like 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning. And some guys who had obviously been working on the road crew since 6 a.m. came in, and they asked her for sandwiches. And she's in the kitchen making her big trays of, ricotta, filled things with pasta and stuff. She goes, I can't make you a sandwich now. Can't you see I'm cooking? So that was her business sense, and it was totally great. We loved her. And so other erstwhile Tivolians that I love, I'm going to tell you 2 quick post office stories. Once I went in and I was mailing something, and I was talking to Linda in the post office, and I said, okay, I'm mailing this, and I needed to go to wherever it was going. She said, well, how would you like to send it? And it was for my husband, Dan, who's a writer, and it was printed material, so it could go media mail. And I said, well, it's for Dan. She goes, oh, I know, he'll want it to go the cheapest possible way. And then the other great postal story is when my kids were applying to college, my son David went online, looked at a bunch of different schools and things, and they ask you if you've visited online, you can put in your name and address. And he had just put in at a couple of different schools, David Nerd, Tivoli, New York. Those schools mailed things and they came to our house. So that's what's going on.
I love it.
Louise, right? All right, beautiful.
All right, so I'm gonna get our last storyteller up here. You got a corgi?
I love a corgi.
That's not a corgi. Oh, no, sorry. Sorry. Okay, so in a nutshell, I was looking for a house for 2 days when I was driving home and my mother was in the midst of a stroke on the phone. I thought she was high. She wasn't high. 3 days later in the hospital, I'm sitting there and on my phone, beep, this yellow house pops up. And I said to my friends, go look at this house, see how it feels. And the next day they said it feels really good. I went down 4 days later. I'm like, all right, my friend said it feels good. I walk around back, I'm looking at this house, and this kind of Cadillac-y car pulls up and he goes, hey, hi there, how you doing? He's not from Boston, but he's like, I'm Reggie Jackson. You thinking about the house? No, I'm the poor one, not the rich one. But if you need anything. Anyway, we almost got Reggie to tell some great stories.
Tivol's first policeman.
He's a lovely, wonderful neighbor who's like, I was doing no mow May, and he was like, you want me to mow? Yeah, mower's broken. He's not from Boston. Anyway, I was like, no mow May, Reggie. And then I came around the front of the house, and this lovely person walking by was like, hey, are you thinking about this house? Fantastic, I have a crock pot. And if you ever want, just come on down to my house, and I'm always using the crock pot, and I'll feed you. I was like, that's so nice. So I've got this lovely person, just back to front, old to new, just so sweet and welcoming. And that was the decision. It was made. I was coming with my mom, with my son, me. We landed. So this is a very special town, but it is funny how we all end up here. You know, how we all end up in this funky, little, tiny, sweet hamlet. So that sweet, sweet person to end the night with the crock pot, God bless, Emily Major. Yeah.
Wow. As the village historian, I am much more comfortable talking about dead people and telling stories about them. And there's so I'm going to ease into telling my story by sort of commenting on other stories that have been told tonight. I can report to Jackie that the charming man on North Road, a photo of him, a very blurry photo of him, was texted to my phone about a year ago, taken through some ferns at a restaurant in London with just an exclamation point. So he's still out there. And when I think about him, I feel like he embodies one of the most important things that I have learned over the years, which is you can only be, cover the kids' ears, you can only be so much of a dick in a small town. So, but yeah, that blog is juicy, so check it out. I don't, but we can talk. I have a tip for you, Caitlin. 17 Montgomery Street has some really cute baby woodchucks. Thank you. And the park, I can attest to the fact that every last proprietor of the Moray Bailey line had the same tone when they said, "You out." So, I came here back in August of 1990. And I remember the first night, I came up from Bard, it was like the second night of orientation, and the light was beautiful, and the tumbleweeds were blowing down the street, and Santa Fe was half the size that it is now. And I was full of that enthusiasm that you can only have when you're like 18 years old, and you've got like your new friends, right? And you're starting out, and I think maybe it was that, but there was something else too that made me feel like this is what home should feel like. And I was a kid who needed a home. And I found one in like the most profound way. I got a job working at Santa Fe, and I was walking home from work late one night, and my car, I'm walking up, and the back end of it is just like kicked out in the street. And I was like, I'm not a great driver, but I don't think I did that. And the next morning there's a knock at my door, and standing there, man and a woman, probably late 30s, I've never seen them before. And the man is playing a non-speaking role, and the woman says, "Listen, I was drunk last night, and I hit your car. And I'm really sorry, but I work in a body shop. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take your car, I'm gonna give you my car, I'm gonna fix your car, and I'm gonna bring it back." And I'm like, all right. Now, the town I had come from, I was from Connecticut. We lived in a bunch of different places, but like
like the last place we lived, it was so uptight. It was so like mowed lawns, white houses, picket fences, like I never really fit in, right? And here was this like grown-up who's like admitting to being drunk and hitting my car, right? So I'm like, well, this is quite tremendous. So she fixed my car. And when she brought it back, she said, come with me. So I get in her car and we drive down Spring Street. And she takes me to her house. She says, look, I live here with my boyfriend. There's always a chicken in the fridge and beer. So anytime you're hungry or you want a beer, just come on in. So the crock pot, like, I'm trying to like continue the tradition. But I learned a lot, you know, from that exchange about like how you can be, right? Like you don't have to put on any sort of boiled little jacket and pearls, you know, to look like a good, like you can just be a good person and still hit people's cars and like, you know, and it's cool. We're doing that here. So that was super formative. Another really tremendous moment was at the end of my freshman year. My mom came to visit. My mom, my little brother and sister, and we were walking up to Santa Fe for dinner, and Ginny is coming through the intersection on a tractor. And this is a while ago. This is before we had a stop sign. So Ginny's ripping through the intersection, giant tractor. She sees me, and she goes, cover the kid's ears, "Hey there, shithead!" And my mom, she just looked at me and she was like, do you know that person? Yeah, that's my friend Ginny. She's like, oh. So that was another good, like, how to be in the world. And so I stayed because, you know, I had this degree in Victorian Lit. Where are you going to go with that? Nowhere. You might as well hunker down. And so years later, I'm hanging out, I'm surfing around on Ancestry.com as one does, and I found that my great grandmother was baptized here in the White Clay Kiln in 1713. And I was like, well, okay, that's pretty deep, right? And like maybe that's why when I got out of the car that first night, it felt like this is home. But I think it's equally important that, you know, home is where people know you and they really see you. And for that, I just want to say thank you, Ginny.
Yeah.
This is actually Bolinas, California. Yeah. Yeah, which is kind of Tivoli West, right? The West Coast Tivoli, only with more Hollywood stars and wolves and way less interesting. Sure, way less interesting. Thank you to all of you who told stories. This was amazing, learning about this place and our connections to it. And thank you to Joel and Emily and Trish and everybody on the board who, you know, let us do this. Joel, do you want to say a little something about the upcoming events weekend?
I gotta tell you, this has just been so magical tonight. You know, when Trish and I started talking back in January and the conversations that our whole committee has had throughout the spring, and if I can stop for a moment, anyone on our sprawling 30-something person Sesquicentennial committee, could you just like raise your hand or stand up so we can recognize you? It's truly been a big effort. It's been so interesting because, of course, Trish's late great husband Bernie village historian, served on the board. It was great. We were able to dedicate the bridge to him when it got rebuilt, Bernie's Bridge. And he wrote the book, The Making of a Community, which is going to be on sale in a new edition tomorrow. So we started talking about what was going on in 1972, and as you've heard, this place was at something of a nadir, and the people that were here were keeping it as real as they could, but it was, you know, rougher and down and whatnot. And Bernie's idea, as I understand it, for the centennial was like, hey, Tivoli's got to speak up to the world and say, like, we're still here, we're on the map, we're coming back. And I believe it led into a series of Tivoli Community Days that went on, and it really did mark the beginning of the turn, which, you know, took decades and always does this, which is part of what's fun about living here, but, you know, it's had an upward trajectory. Well, you know, that's not what Tivoli needs in 2022. We're on the map, people know about us. It's a very different thing, and what we're talking about, what does Tivoli need right now, and how could we use the Sesquicentennial to accomplish what it needs? And it's really about integrating our community more tightly. And so it's been great to hear from the new people and the old people and hear those themes in the stories unprompted. I think that's what we all feel, you know. Being mayor of this village, my hometown, is just, it's such a privilege, and I truly love it. But I get to talk to everybody, and I'm the complaint department, and you know, I get pulled left and right and front and back, and I have this unique perspective, and I get to say, you know what, all these people love the same place for the same reasons. We're all in love with this village, but why aren't they getting along? You know, so it's just great to have some of that happening. That's what this weekend's all about, and you know, I want to thank Kevin and Caitlin for putting this on and putting this together, and everyone who spoke, because I think we're succeeding at our themes and our effort. And just a few things in the coming days, there's been some confusion. Okay, so tomorrow, 2 o'clock, big parade through the village. It's going to be fabulous. 2 o'clock. Afterwards, you know, we've got other things, but we've got a basketball tournament before the parade, kickball game after the parade, arts and crafts under the pavilion tomorrow. So the parade in the park going on tomorrow afternoon. 6 o'clock, it all moves back here to the Masons, and we've got the beer tent. We're going to have a band. We've got QR codes around the village, 24 historic locations. If you scan them, here for the History Committee. If you scan them, you will get a series of photographs through the decades and longer, perhaps. So, absolutely fabulous. Tomorrow night, over here, block party, band, food, DJ in the street, dancing. It's going to be great. The fireworks are not tomorrow. I want to be clear about that, because some people are confused. The fireworks are Sunday night. Sunday, we've got all sorts of stuff throughout the day. You can read the program. Everybody walk the loop at 4. Tivoli History in a Nutshell at 2. Yoga in the park. But the big closer on Sunday is a picnic at the park. It's a BYO. Bring your food, bring your blanket, bring your chair. All we're doing is inviting you to the park. So don't come looking for food. We don't get t-shirts. We don't bring out the...
Oh my God!
We don't serve the food. And the fireworks, people are always like, when are the fireworks? They're at dark. Sunday night. All right, thanks everyone. How about a round of applause for these guys?